This episode of Traditional Millennials is brought to you by Talent Overhype and Candy Clouds.
Welcome to, a special episode of Traditional Millennials, episode 23. This one is called, Do Jewish People Benefit from White Privilege? I first would like to say that I was blessed enough to have a 2.5-hour conversation with an Ashkenazi Jewish man and an elder. And in the heart of all hearts, it was a conversation embedded in love, peace, prosperity, and desire for world peace. And I got his blessing from someone who said he feels an anointedness in me to be able to have an honest conversation as a black person in everything that's been going on. So I want to begin by saying thank you for the conversation and taking some of his advice. Specifically, I want to begin this by saying I empathize, support, and condemn anti-Semitism towards my Jewish brothers and sisters. And I understand how hard it has been for your family, your ancestors, and for the stigmas that float around, and the crime against humanity that the Holocaust was. I say that as a black person who is a victim of the transatlantic slave trade, losing my culture, my lineage, my name, my language, and represent a people who similar to you, identical to you, in a sense, also went through a crime against humanity. But this conversation won't focus on that. It will focus on the historical relationship between blacks and Jews and some silencing that's happening, some things that's going on Clubhouse. And it is embedded in a desire to create unity and peace. And in his words, the elder that I spoke to, black people having such a tremendous heart and a soul and a spirit that is so joyful and so persevering that a moment like this, it is not about centering us. It's about empathizing with you guys and approaching this in a way where change, peace, and prosperity in a mutual sense can become a reality. I first would like to say that this entire conversation, in terms of my experience with it, began with a room on Clubhouse started by some Jewish people called, Do Jews Benefit from White Privilege? Very interesting conversation. Very, very interesting positioning to have, because I've always wondered, is being Jewish a race or a religion? And the way it was centered in the title, it seemed to be positioned as a race. So as I step into the room, just to really hear the conversation, in my mind, I'm thinking this may be similar to what the black community deals with when it comes to light skin, dark skin privilege, and the byproducts that we are of, white supremacy and the issues that we go through when it comes to the social engineering and brainwashing of our people. But I was surprised to see a room that was filled with white presenting Jews speaking towards what is considered their privilege as white presenting Jews. And at some point in this conversation, black people were mentioned. And it wasn't in a frame of black Jews, but just black within complexion or black. So I saw that as an opportunity to come to the stage to ask the question, hey guys, I've always been curious and interested in, are Jewish people a race or a religion? And I am saying that because the title of this room, Do Jews Benefit from White Privilege, seems to lean more towards a race, because white privilege is, almost like the stench. Racism is racism, the sickness of the world, and white supremacy is the overall global, hardship and the ideology that creates all of this madness. But white privilege is kind of like the stench, cool, I guess. It's the fragrance that you can put on, and the way that this room is titled, it seems to be more set up in that way. So could you guys kind of elaborate a bit more on Jewish people based on ethnicity and Jewish people based on a religion? But specifically in this one, since white privilege is more of a race-based thing, by way of white supremacy and racism. White supremacy and racism is the same thing to me. I kind of need some clarity and understanding. And the conversation went from then to a bunch of variations of what this could mean for different sets of Jews. At that point, some black Jews came to the stage, and it became kind of like a conversation amongst themselves. And, someone in the heart of it just kind of looking to see how they made sense of it. And so at a certain point, a black woman, I would believe would be more of a descendant of American slavery like myself, comes to the stage and says, we've been in here for about 5 hours listening to, white or Jews speak about white privilege or white Jews, white and I'm Jew, and there really isn't a lot of clarity that we even hear amongst yourselves when it comes to what this actually means. So is it possible that we can actually talk about Jewish privilege? Since this room is about white privilege, is there a Jewish privilege? And another woman mentioned some statements that began to trigger the room. And in the conversation that I had with the Jewish elder yesterday for 2.5 hours, by the way, centered in the Jewish story, no oppression Olympics, I have to say that. It from what I know, the terms that were used were triggering to people who still have in the back shadow, the Holocaust and these horrendous crimes against, their families and ancestors. And she said, yes, Jewish people have the privilege of having a hand in the transatlantic slave trade, but not being mentioned. And then she went into a few things about the banking industry, the entertainment industry, the media, and the power. And at that moment, the room began to explode. And she was removed, like in mid-sentence. And mid-sentence, like probably couldn't even land her voice and was gone. I came to find out that she was removed. At first, I thought maybe a phone call came. And it was puzzling to me because I was in a moment where I personally am like exhausted with race and racism. Like, do you see the color of my skin? I'm black. There's no way I can escape that conversation. So I'm just tired of having the conversation. I was more so interested in other people have this conversation, because by default of my complexion, I am always at the end, and people of melanated, we're at the end of the line, when it comes to that. So I was a little disappointed that a conversation that stems into power began to be so abrupt, and then these statements about anti-Semitism began to fly within the room. And I tried to stick around a bit to see if the room would settle, and at this point, since we are been in here so long when it comes to race, maybe there's an opportunity for us to really just get into power and privilege and what that looks like between Jewish people and black people, since we didn't really get a full definite space when it comes to white privilege with Jewish people. And it didn't seem to go anywhere, because it then became more of a conversation about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, and things began to stop. So the answers that I was looking for, I didn't feel like it was going to get there. So I ended up leaving the room, and the girl who ended up getting kicked out, she pinged me to another room. The room she pinged me to was booted out of room. It was booted out of Jewish room, speaking truths about Jewish privilege or something like that. Or booted out of speaking truth to Jewish privilege, something of that nature. And at that point, my goal in this space that we share equally, since we landed on Jewish privilege, is to let's have a conversation about Jewish privilege when it comes to the relationship with black people and power, and not race, because I can't escape black, if you understand what I mean. But based on the other conversation, it seemed as though there was like a bit of a Jewish or white, like there was it seemed to be like a box back and forth that could be. And at this point, I didn't want to, I don't have a box as a black person to be in or out of, and so that's what the conversation began. And everything in that space was to try to have a honest, thoughtful conversation about Jewish people, black people, our history, and a power, privilege, understanding, based in two people who have a crime against humanity that they share, if you get what I mean. And in the batch of many Jewish people who came to the stage, it was only a select few, less than 5, who were willing to acknowledge that there is definitely a bit of a imbalance of power and equity based on the relationship that blacks and Jews have had. When I think of Russell Simmons and a Rick Rubin, I'm an artist, I'm in the entertainment music, I look at it in that type of lens, which they were co-founders together, or there seems to be a mutual agreement where nobody's like on Twitter or Instagram saying you owe me money, I hate you, or whatever, on either end in a space like that. So I've always kind of based my black-Jew relationship in that ideology. So it began to be disappointing that the way in which the room was created to kind of have an honest conversation began to be a lot of centering around the Holocaust, a lot of claims of anti-Semitism, and a denial of certain wrongs that have been done to black people. And it was hurtful because as a black person, I have to acknowledge the wrongs of my people, even those that I don't participate in. I've been on Clubhouse since October in rooms of things that men have done that have nothing to do with me go on. And I go into those rooms and empathetically give love and space to women, white, Asian, black, whomever, just to showcase that black men know how to be accountable for our shortcomings, but we are also out here working to make sure that we, one, fix ourselves, but also fix our brethren. And in moments like this on this stage that we created with the goal to see if we could have some Jewish camaraderie and some empathy as much as required, when it comes to the Holocaust and that crime, it was almost as if we were white supremacists on the stage and attacking you or had a history of doing so, and not black people who have went through a heinous crime against humanity on this soil that seemed to be ignored. And I'm not going to say that I agree with everything that happened or the delivery of everything that happened, but I will stand on integrity, that knowing that everything that transpired in my heart of hearts was in pain and frustration to try to rectify what seems to be an historic imbalance and unfair relationship. And there were some Jewish people who stood by side of us who agreed. So we felt validated in that claim, and it just wasn't enough Jewish people to come. And I've come to understand that it's easy to generalize if nobody desires to separate or call out foul play. And in what has occurred, I truly felt as though there was no one trying to separate. And instead of separating from things that you disagree with, that not all, but a portion of from your community has done to black people, it was a denial altogether, and a almost Cameron-like white supremacist way of reverse racism with anti-Semitism. And as a black person who is at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to this, based on this, in the eyes of white supremacy, I felt as though, no different than I don't have the power to be racist against a white person, I don't have the power to be anti-Semitic against a Jew, because we are talking about privilege and power, and a group of people who couldn't even get understanding in their own room of if it's a race or a religion. And that's kind of, I guess, where I can stop that part. There's a lot of other things that happen on Clubhouse that allow a lot of other rooms to be shut down. And a lot of voices were silenced, black voices. I'm sure there was some Jewish voices who the Jewish community felt as though didn't stand next to the code, I believe, maybe, were suspended as well. And in that, I had an opportunity through another account sit in a proud Zionist where you at room on Clubhouse, and it almost felt as though I was listening to a white supremacist group, like in the same fashion as a person of American slavery. I'm no stranger to understanding what that tone and what that energy feels like. And that room, just listening, feel that way. Even, the person I was with even asked a question on behalf of me about reparations, and one person was like, no way, not my tax dollars. And it was like, wait, like, to a community of people who receive reparations through a crime against humanity, no different than my people, it was like, really? This just doesn't make any sense. So I had to get up out of that space. I told my friend they could, remove their account, and I could just try to gather these things. At that point in time, I was already receiving some DMs from some Jewish people who wanted to sit down. This is all about dialogue. And luckily, the Jewish elder who I had an opportunity to have a 2.5-hour conversation with yesterday reached out and said, yo, I hear a passion in what your tone is and a desire for healing, peace, and love for our communities. I was a bit uncomfortable with some things that were said, but seeing that in you, I would love to communicate. So we ended up getting on the phone yesterday, and when I mean to tell you, we had a thoughtful, respectful, truthfully, brutally honest, love-centered conversation. It was amazing to talk to a Ashkenazi Jewish Elder. This is an older man, seasoned, has seen things. I believe his grandmother was a victim of the Holocaust. We really had an opportunity to have a really, really great conversation. And I'll kind of share out a little bit of the recap and some things that, were truthful revelations to me, and how the ideology of whiteness, it should be ended after anybody sees this. So we get on the phone and begin to have a conversation, recap of what's happened. He knows my account has been suspended. We talked about the room. He told me, some things that were going on prior to me getting in there with the Jewish people. And we really just did a recap, and he knew, he shared the room space with me, so he knew, my sentiments and things. So we didn't really have to check the air of one another. We kind of knew that we were coming in love. And a lot of the conversation focused and centered around the trauma that Jewish people deal with day to day by way of the Holocaust and anti-Semitism and these paranoias. And in what was going on, it was very important for me to not center my plight, because I think it's easy. I'm in America. Slavery happened here. I think it's easy. I think the overall goal is to not center ourselves and have other people center us. And if we are a people who is focused on centering everyone else but us, then wouldn't we all end up being in the center, if you get what I mean? Because I'm not pushing me in to push someone else out. I'm pulling, yo, come in. And then they pulling me, come in. So it was very important for me to activate my listening skills to completely understand his positioning, what it means to be anti-Semitic, which I got the understanding, and importantly, how I was not anti-Semitic, confirmed. And just some trigger words and terms or whatever that I should be aware of when approaching this very delicate conversation. And there's some things that occurred that were specifically heartbreaking, but I kind of want to walk you guys through it. So I learned about the history, not saying that I don't know the overall, but I learned about, the history. He centers a lot of it around him and his family, Poland stuff, German stuff. I asked questions about Jew, specifically my main question was, is Jewish and ethnicity, race, religion, like what is it? And his best definition of it, saying that it was a diaspora, so interchangeable, so to speak, that he considers it a civilization that is of ethnicity, culture, which is like practice, and religion, which is faith. So I said, okay, that makes sense. I could understand that. And how he can understand how that can be confusion at times. And then kind of gave a lot of story about the Holocaust, his grandma, and really continue to keep it centered on like the trauma, that it has been experienced in this paranoia and fear, that exist. And, things that were said in our room and questions that we asked were some of the same conversations that happened by way of what happened during the Holocaust with the Nazis. And we spoke about power and privilege and what the power and privilege was in Germany, Jewish people being marginalized and having to pull themselves up, and then coaches always representing a small population of society, so I guess always kind of being like, we all we got, which is an ideology and a belief I definitely can understand. I think we all kind of pick our tribes, so I can get that. And then the conversation kind of got a little deeper, because after getting the history and, not playing, but kind of like battling within myself to not blurt out slavery. And a lot of the conversation that when he explained these acts seemed very identical to what my people have went through, and it was almost a time or two where I was like, yeah, like that's the playbook they got from America. They perfected it on my people and unfortunately did it to yours, but never really trying to lean in too much, but just enough to throw little darts in the air to try to make this web of a connection. So we finally get to a point where the conversation becomes, okay, present day, what's up with us? I've given you the story of what happened, what's going on. You've been a part of it. You've given me the history. We've confirmed I'm not anti-Semitic. We good there, it's love. But where we at now? And there's some conversations that need to be had amongst my people and your people. And I need to know, how can we have those conversations without the Karen effect, is what I would call it. The Jewish version of Karen effect of anti-Semitism by black people. Like, we don't have power to do anything. So in that, so what's going on? And something broke my heart that he said that shifted the dynamic of the conversation, that then put my active listening skills to use. And as much as it broke my heart, it's still how I started this episode. He said that certain things trigger Jewish people. Talk about media. Jewish people control the media. Jewish people control the banks. Jewish people control like the media, the music industry, anything, He said that's triggering to Jewish people. So I said, so how can we have these conversations if my people and your people participate in these things, and we've had and you admit, because he admitted that there's inequity there, that we deserve reparations and we have been unjust. He validated that for sure. It was important for that because he did do that. So I don't want to say he didn't. He did. And continue to let me know about his story specifically, because that's what the tone was. But he surely did validate what we deserve as black people. So he says, after I say, well, these are complicated conversations that need to happen in terms of equity and power, because historically my people have participated in a lot, and we have not received the proper ownership and equity. So how can we have these conversations? Give me a second. And he said, which broke my heart and transformed an aspect of the relationship in the conversation specifically. He said, you would have to approach Jewish people as, I know you went through a lot. I know you're dealing with a lot. I know the world has done you wrong. I know that the Holocaust was wrong. I know that when you guys came to America, you came with nothing. You had to bust your ass to get into the buildings and the doors that you're in and get to a position where you could actually have something. And then I guess follow with the question or the concerns that I have or we have with the relationship. And I said, I finally see where the disconnect lies, because this and that is wrong on many occasions. It's wrong in idea, it's wrong in execution, it's wrong. Why? Because I'm an American descendant of slavery who isn't even in the doors that your people are in. And I still have to come to you guys empathizing with your story on my soil, on the land that my people built. Now, if I was in Germany, I could understand. It would come with that because I'm on your land. But in a land that I built, I still have to put you in front of me. It's wrong. From a moral sense, it's wrong. If I were to pull out the Torah, it's wrong. From a religious stance and sense of God, it's wrong. Why? Because you guys had the option to come here. You guys have gotten us in many a door. I'm aware of history. And even in the doors that you've gotten us in, we still haven't shared equity there. So for it to still center your people and y'all plight on a land and on a soil that my people built is wrong. Wrong. So we had a moment of pause, obviously, you would think, because at this point I've taken everything he's told me in a conversation that I've continued to harness with love and empathy. And in the moment where that exchange was supposed to happen, when it comes to us in this relationship, he still desired us to send to them. Remember, I said, if I send to you, you send to me, we come to the middle. So it still was inequitable. And heartbreaking. To say the least, it was heartbreaking. And then I say, do you know what else is heartbreaking? Is that you're in the doors because you benefit from the same crime that was committed against you. And I don't understand how that is rationalized. I furthered myself, because at this point now I have to communicate. I'm up now, okay, because I feel like, all right, cool, y'all ain't got us. I'm not gonna say y'all, but in this moment, this is the fundamental flaw as to why y'all don't have us. American slavery is the social engineer project of white supremacy. This is where they perfected it at. Straight through the empires in Europe and everybody who had their hands in it. North Africa, West Africa, whoever. By way of whiteness. My people went through that, and it was perfected in America to the point where Hitler took those plays and did it to Jewish people. This is how I'm talking to him, to your people. So I find it cowardice. I find it like, it doesn't, like, I find it like an anomaly that your people who started a room, remember this is all based on a room called Do Jewish People Benefit from White Privilege? That your people could still benefit from something that was used to kill them. Like, make this make sense to me. To the point where on my soil, where it is still being used to kill my people, your people are comfortable hiding under it, assimilating with it. That is insanity to me. He continued to try to bring up trauma, Jewish trauma. I said, that is insanity. Let me walk you through it again. Whiteness, white supremacy, established in Europe, creating slavery, sent to Americas, utilizing my people to build this country. We are at the bottom because of slavery. Perfected in America, white supremacy, whiteness, perfected in America, expanded globally. The biggest crime against humanity is racism, white supremacy. And your people were victims of it by way of Hitler taking that and implementing it on your people. Then you come to America and black people who are still fighting that same system, you're not by our side fighting it too. You're assimilating with it by way of the same thing that was used to kill you, whiteness. I cannot understand it. He couldn't explain it. It is unexplainable. So in that, whiteness should be over. It's over to me. Because we could delve into, is Jewish a race, religion? We could really, if it's an ethnicity. I could give you stats about what the Torah says, with the seed flows through man, through Jacob. You know, we could give Isaac, Abraham. I could give you that, down to Moses. The real Hebrews, if we wanted to say that. I could give you, it's a religion, and okay, people in Europe connected to the religion, so at some point they created the Zionists. At some point the Zionists happened to be the Rothschilds, who are German Jews, who Balfour Declaration takes Israel, and now you have white Jews that benefit Israel, and now they're fighting with melanated Jews from Palestine. I could go into all that I've done, studied. We'd had a thoughtful conversation. But, and this is stuff y'all could go all look up yourselves. But it is unexplainable at this point that it's okay to be white when you're Jewish. And he could not explain it to me. And I want to take my time here because I don't want to be offensive to anyone. But it was heartbreaking because even in my homeland, our blackness is denied. Our story, our plight. It makes me think of what that woman said in the Proud Zionists that almost sound like Proud Boys. It almost was like the same energy said about we don't deserve reparations. And as much as he empathized and said he empathized with slavery and all of those things, at the moment where the equity should have been equal, he still desired us to come to Jewish people like this. And that privilege is why the imbalance is the way it is. That ideology of I can truly assimilate with whiteness in the land that this tactic was perfected against my people. It's just selfish. It's just selfish. And you're not here fighting with black people who are still going under that system. Doors that you're able to go in based on white proximity or white privilege. Because again, I got to bring it back to the room that was started by Jewish people about benefiting from white privilege. How can Jewish people benefit from white privilege? The creation of white supremacy gives white privilege, and that was used to kill your people. Then on top of that, you use anti-Semitism. That's, again, I just don't understand it. Let's say a slave master said, plantation's back open, but this time you get your own house. Hire your own people. Hire whoever you want. You know, that there's a saying that said drapetomania was when slaves would run away, it was tried to be proven that we were mentally crazy to run away from our master. I think that it would be mentally crazy to run back to him because he's going to give me a nice house and the assimilation of slavery. And because black people were slapped with the Bible in the face when we came over here, we Christians. So in the house, what's up, my nigga? I'm a nigga. But outside the house, I'm Christian. And I can be selfish because of slavery and move against people a certain way because of slavery. And then the moment they do something against me, I say, oh no, that's Antichrist. It's Antichrist, Antichrist, Antichrist. I just think that it's insane. So the conversation was there for a while, and it made me begin to see why melanated Jews are not in a position of power. It made me wonder why in the industries that are run and controlled by Jews, I don't see melanated Jews. I can't go to the Diamond District and see a Jewish person that looks like me. I'm a man of the Most High God, anointed by the Most High God. And I'm very aware that the people who built Israel, the people who built Egypt, you feel me? The people who Moses set free were melanated people. And it's just it's a crime to see how white supremacy was even used to give white presenting Jews an entire landmass in the Holy Land. Because that's what that is. That's the Holy Land. The Holy Land. And when you understand history and you look up the people behind that it's challenging for me to believe that those are the original people. It's challenging to see that there's true good intention for humanity when you see certain names a part of what that has become. It's challenging when you know the history of Europe and these empires, from the Holy Roman Empire to, Victorian rule, in the UK to, we could go through all of that, Germany, we go to the Nordics, I'm a historian, that's the religion I believe in. It's just sad to have all of that information, see that this is where whiteness was established, and that was used to even justify slavery. And the people who, in most modern times, are so quick to say something is anti-Semitic and throw the Holocaust in your face, are benefiting. The ones who white present specifically are benefiting or can benefit by assimilating with whiteness. I believe that whiteness should be abolished now. I cannot be Christian tomorrow and black today. I can't even have a conversation about if there's an option like that Jewish room was, that were created by Jewish people who couldn't even understand it together. Doing history, I yearn for melanated Jews who, if I were to look at the positions of power, they are nowhere close. Few and far in between. But because they're Jewish, they still are attacked. And because they don't have the ability to assimilate with a certain privilege, like some other Jews are, they are still within the reach of a certain danger that the lesser melanated, more white presenting Jews aren't. And it's heartbreaking that racism is so divisive, embedded in this imaginary superiority. It's just crazy. I'm gonna read something that I had came across while I was preparing this. In 1982, and I think it was Maryland, there was a case that ended up happening where somebody by the name of Teflia, if I got that right, versus Cobb's. It ended up being in 1987, but the incident happened in 1982. So it went through court and ended up in the Supreme Court. And it was basically because Teflia was a Jewish person leaving a synagogue or at a synagogue, and some KKK members did some heinous acts. They spray painted some slurs and some swastikas and stuff like that. And it ended up being a case that went to the Supreme Court. And Teflia, rightfully so, won. And a lot of conversation was about it's being protected under the Civil Rights Act, which is more of a race and ethnicity type of thing. And in the case, it was kind of indicated, and an aspect of it was groups can be protected under the Civil Rights Act specifically because race is an idea. It's not real. It's an idea. You know, culture is real. It's something you can do, you practice. Ethnicity is real. You know, it's your genetics. You know, and that's true. But race, by way of complexion, it isn't real. So when I read this, it was like good for them, because if those protections aren't there for groups, then what will happen to groups? You know, and I don't know. I wonder if the Black Panther Party could have, you know, been able to be protected. You know, I wonder how many groups that don't have to subscribe to a race, because a race doesn't exist. It's made up. But groups can get more justice than Black people, given a race that we don't even truly come from. It's not even true. You know, I just wish that if I were to say I'm not Black tomorrow, and I were to say I am the group of GCAN, and it stands for genuinely care about my planet, would the Supreme Court protect me if somebody committed a crime against me? Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of research for this, you know. I learned about the Torah, you know, the message, the seed, you know, the anointing, you know, that God, you know, gave through Abraham, and who's gonna be the one to save the world, you know, bring peace. You know, I say world peace, and I believe that's all of us. I think that that's all of our jobs. And I mean, I'm not here to go any further. I could turn this into the History Channel if y'all wanted me to. But I really just want to say that this stuff has to stop. Too many people have suffered. And over what? Over a world that we could all enjoy equally. There's enough for everyone, as long as we are willing to give and not just take everything. In the conversation that I had with the Jewish elder, you know, he, even after he said that statement that broke my heart, he said, you just have to understand that Jewish people have went through so much. You know, they may sometimes want to hold things, and because they're scared that something may happen to them, you know. And we got into, you know, a little bit of history of them being kicked out of places, and I did my own research and came to understand that the first two places that Jews were kicked out of was Africa, you know, Carthage and Alexander, I believe. And I mean, shoot, this is in 215, and you know, what's the other one? 250 and 415. You know, Christianity, you know, becomes something in 325. You know, we talking about ages ago. So if there's some bad blood, you know, between our people, that's dating back, you know, is that like the first street beef? You feel me? Like, you know, you got kids, yeah, I'm from New York City, so you got kids banging over projects, and this corner versus that corner from beef that happened in the 50s or 40s or 30s, or not necessarily that long ago. Most of the times it's stuff from the 70s and the 80s by way of the crack era. I'm just playing, but I'm gonna be serious. You know, if there's something there, you know, I pray that we can find a way to heal and come together, because I come with love, but I come with a passion for peace for my people, and an unwillingness to be stopped until we have it. And it's important for us to hold everybody accountable. You know, we at that moment in history where it's like you put your hand out, you're either gonna get high five, slap on the hand, you know what I mean, or you're gonna get a slap, you know what I mean? I mean, you're either gonna get a high five or a slap, and everybody has to put their hand out. And I have to be someone that is embedded in the heart of my community, working hard to save my community, to make my community accountable, to clean up the nonsense that happens in my community. I think everybody should do that with their own until we all become one community. And the last thing that I'll say is, there was a moment in time where I used to work for an organization called the Jewish Community Center. And it was in a NYCHA facility. So basically we were funded by the Jewish Community Center. And I worked in the NYCHA buildings, you know, black and brown kids. No pool, no gym, couple rooms, tried to do our best with the program. And about a mile and a half down the road, there was the main hub of the Jewish Community Center where like the Jewish kids go, the Jewish people go. And big gym, pool, state-of-the-art sports, you know what I mean, like gym. And it used to break my heart when I used to try to get access to have my kids go to the gym to play ball, and we were denied. It used to break my heart when I used to try to have my kids get there to be in a pool, and it was denied. And it was, wow, like, you guys fund our program, but because my kids are black and brown, they can't come to this facility. It kind of makes me argue against, is this a race or a religion? Because a religion of people can't do that. And a race of people who went through what they went through would be the last person want to shun love out. You know, other people who have went through something as serious as they have. You know, so I don't have all the answers. I do know who I am as a child of the Most High God. And I just hope that we can get to world peace. Varsity P, Traditional Millennials, episode 23. And I'm out.
Is there a difference between Jewish and the Jews?
No difference.
So Jewish means that you're from Judea. Just like a British person is from Britain and a Swedish person is from Sweden. A Jewish person is from Judea. Just like a Swede is a Swede. But they're Swedish because they're from Sweden. So a Jew is someone who's from Judea, right? A Jew is a Jew, and Jewish just means that you're from Judea. So hopefully that clears it up.
Are you guys aware of the room that was made about Jewish and white privilege? And like how that even started all of this stuff?
Yes, we are familiar with it. And we're tired of hearing the stuff we heard there.
That was by Jews, though. But that room was made by Jews.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Even if it was, yeah, some Jews are part of it. I think it's part of Alex's page or group. But
I believe only one moderator was Jewish, and all the other ones were not Jewish and totally in control of the conversation, while the one Jewish moderator left the stage, had to go. So yeah,
They own this app.
Welcome.
They own this app. Like they own this app.
When Ariel was talking about what Jewish meant, she made it sound like it was entirely about geography, but I think it's important to distinguish between Judaism and Jewish people and Jewishness, and it's really a more complicated issue because people can be part of the Jewish religion even though they got to be Jews by converting and don't have any descendants are not descendants from anybody who lived in Judea. So I'm not answering the question. I'm just saying that it's a more complicated issue because the concept of peoplehood and ethnicity
He
and
had to
race
clear that
and
shit up
religion
because there's different facts
mixed together.
So don't go in there lying.
Just tell me what you said.
In a complicated way.
Definitely not a simple situation. It's a very
But there is a
important issue.
difference.
A difference between what?
He just said there was a difference between Jews and Jewish people.
I
No.
was mentioning that it's a deeper issue and that there's, it's not so black and white.